everybody. Welcome and thank you for coming. My name is Amanda Overs. I'm the founder of I Can Make Shoes. It's an independently run shoemaking school. We teach the craft to anything from hobbyists to people who are looking to start brands of their own. To celebrate 10 years in the industry, I have recently launched my first shoemaking book. And tomorrow, as I celebrate my 33rd birthday, I'll fly to the Philippines with the British Council to share my craft. So that's exciting. I am here tonight, though, to welcome you to this evening's Inspiring Entrepreneurs Leaders in Luxe event, because I'm also a user of the Business and IP Centre, and I've benefited very much from the brilliant support that it offers entrepreneurs like myself. I participated in the library's ERDF-funded Innovating for Growth program, which was absolutely incredible in helping me take a step back from the day-to-day running of my business and really become more strategic in taking my brand to the next level. To give you an idea, within the first sort of 6 months of finishing the program, I had actually doubled my workspace and tripled the size of my team. So it's really amazing. The centre supports entrepreneurs day in, day out by providing one-on-one support, training, network and inspirational events like tonight's, and free access to the UK's most comprehensive collection of business data, market research and IP resources. Since launching in 2006, the Business and IP Centre has welcomed over 750,000 people through its doors, and it excels at supporting diverse audiences, with a whopping 63% of users currently being women. I would definitely recommend and encourage any small business owner today to go on the website and find out how the British Library could help you achieve your business goals. Not just in London, but in any of the other 13 business and IP centres operating around the country, some of which I think are joining us here live tonight. So I'll now hand you over to Helen Brocklebank, the CEO of Walpole, and we'll kick off the evening.
Oh, thank you, Amanda.
Yeah.
That's an amazing business right there. We need to be in touch afterwards. Your skills are fantastic. And it was really inspiring hearing about your relationship with the British Library. It's really fantastic to be here for this Inspiring Entrepreneurs event, Leaders in Luxury. I think the Business and IP Centre here at the London Library is absolutely second to none as a resource. And I can't get over the fact that it's completely free. I mean, it's really, really sensational. And the fact that business owners who have used the resources and extraordinary advice here are 4 times as likely to succeed as business owners who don't is real testament to the exceptional work that you do here. So I'm incredibly grateful to be here, and also to be able to introduce the fantastic panel who I know well because I've worked with them for a long time. But I'm Helen Brocklebank, the Chief Executive of Walpole, and for those of you that quite possibly have never heard of Walpole, it is the organisation that is dedicated to promoting, protecting and developing the business of British luxury here. And it's a business sector in the UK that grew 49% over the last 4 years. So that's incredibly rapid growth. I mean, that's twice the rate of fashion, it's 3 times the rate of beauty, it's many times the national average. So it's a business sector that's in its pomp at the moment. That success is not driven just by the established brands that you'll be really familiar with, iconic names like Burberry or Harrods or Rolls-Royce or Bentley or Wedgwood. It's driven in great part by the incredible entrepreneurial talents of a team of really special people, of creative founders. And the fact that we have that in this country is something that we should be really proud of. It's an incredibly fertile place to launch a brand, as I'm sure many of you know. So, and Walpole has a dedicated programme that helps to nurture these new fledgling brands. So it's called Brands of Tomorrow, and that programme chooses 12 brands every year and invest the time and talent of those established iconic brands into helping these newer brands get to their next level. And I'm delighted that everyone on the panel here today came through that programme. Of that programme, 90% is still in business, of the 108 brands that we've taken through the programme. And they have contributed more than £350 million to the economy over its 12 years. So I'm really excited to be sharing some of the insights and the journey that the brands have made. And I'm going to introduce them in a little minute. But before I do introduce them, I just want to remind everybody to tweet like mad, because when we look at questions, those might come up on the screen and we can ask them. To Instagram, so the hashtag for Twitter is BIPCLuxe, LUXE. The handle at Twitter is BIPC, and Instagram is at Business and IP Centre. That and is a ampersand, not a written and. And the prize draw donated by the panellists is just really amazing. Anyway, please join me in welcoming Darren Singh, co-founder of the Jackal. A men's media brand. Jennifer Chamandi, eponymous founder of a luxury shoe brand, and you can see on her feet an example of her work, and a person who's the only person in the world to hold a patent on footwear. Clare Hornby founded a high-end fashion brand, ME+EM. I will clap in the middle. Frieda Gormley, who co-founded with her husband Javi, House of Hackney, and Rupert Holloway, who founded Conker Spirit, which I hope many of you will be going to buy and enjoying before Christmas. So anyway, we've had a little clap for Darren, but please join me in now welcoming everybody else. I'm Chief Clapping Officer. I am not. So anyway, I just want to kick off by asking the same question to everybody in turn. Tell me a little, Rupert, if we start with you, tell us a little bit about Conker Spirit and why you started that brand.
Yeah, well, Conker Spirit is a distillery down in Dorset in Bournemouth. We were Dorset's first gin distillery, selling our first bottle of Dorset Dry back in April 15, but it all emerged out of me basically being totally miserable with my day job, basically. So Conker's a real kind of poster boy for, that kind of ditch the day job because you're miserable, and the thought of a career in that. And literally,
what were you doing?
I hope there's no quantity surveyors in the room because I tend to sort of really piss them off. Actually, no, it's each their own basically, and I just got myself on a career path where I genuinely saw the next sort of milestone as like retirement. So and thought, you know what, a few of my friends had sort of either working for themselves, literally as tradesmen or running their own thing, and I thought I want to be a master of my own time. And I'd kind of put off this real kind of burning desire to do invent something. But
why? And why did you hit on spirit, on gin? I mean, why was it that? I mean, that's quite a leap from quantity surveying to. I can see why you want to launch your own business, but maybe I'm in housing
hit
or
the
something.
Bottle,
hit the bottle. Your job drove you so mad.
Yeah.
Thought, I've drunk all the gin. I'll have to make my own.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I never kind of weave the kind of artificial marketing spin that. As a frustrated gin distiller who'd always wanted to set his own distillery up, it really was a case of I must find an idea that I can be really passionate about, and got my sort of head into the space of being creative, literally reading about creativity and learning how these famous entrepreneurs do it. And then it was basically the last idea I had. It was the best idea I landed on, and I was so convinced that if I didn't do it, someone else would, and that's a really powerful motivator. And it was we've all seen this gin thing, this gin boom. So this idea was November 13 was when the sort of gin light bulb landed. And so because I was already in the mindset of find something else, and the idea landed, and I could see every aspect of the business. I could see how we'd look and feel online and packaged, and how the sort of flavour profile, and
Yeah. And six years later, you're distributed nationally.
Yeah.
You're in all the big luxury stores. You're
Yeah.
in Waitrose. You're in bars. You're you're established. That's we'll talk about where it's going to go next in a minute. So Frieda, tell us about House of Hackney. What were you doing, and where did the inspiration come from?
So House of Hackney is an interiors brand which was launched by myself and my husband around our kitchen table in our house in Hackney in 2011. So we're 8 years old. We both came from fashion and design backgrounds. I was a buyer and a designer at Topshop. Had been there quite a while. Was there during the great days of Topshop and could see how a successful brand operated. But for a few different reasons, I'd always grown up really passionate about interiors, and it just came to the time where myself and my husband, we were decorating our home. And quite simply, we couldn't find what we were looking for. We were obviously people who were very much involved in design and trend prediction, and the interiors market just had not changed. It was either IKEA, high street, disposable, identikit at one side, or else the more luxurious textile and just hadn't changed and was kind of like it was the curtains that our parents had basically. So quite bravely in retrospect, we decided to we were looking for an aesthetic which was inspired by the past, but which would feel quite modern and relevant and spoke to our generation. We were really, I've always been hugely passionate about wallpaper. Very much grew up in the 80s, surrounded by it, and whether that was Colfax and Fowler or Laura Ashley or William Morris, and we quite bravely decided to leave our jobs and create our own. I think similarly, a little bit like yourself, I was obviously working for the high street, and becoming less. Becoming more disenfranchised with disposability, and was looking to create product that had and a brand that had values to it, that had a more sustainable message, and so decided to very much House of Hackney has its roots in sustainability, in made in England, in low production, in low wastage. So we kind of created what we couldn't find, and I suppose which had our heart and passion in it as well. And 8 years on, you've just opened in New York, so the journey is going pretty well right now. Claire, tell us, so ME+EM, incredibly cool brands, modern women, very high-end, beautiful pieces, much loved, as we were talking about, by the press. You've got some really great fans. Tell us where did all that come from? What was the inspiration?
I'd always loved clothes. So my business is, we summarise it as direct-to-consumer luxury, and we operate in the women's wear market. I'd always loved clothes. I made clothes with my mum as a child. I'd always had a passion for starting my own business. I used to run a market stall. And then I segued through my career at Harrods, where I got a taste for luxury that I couldn't afford. And then I went into advertising, where I formed a love of positioning brands, strategy, getting close to the customer, really understanding the customer. And then about 15 years later, I just had this longing to start my own company, looked for a gap in the market and thought, and I think it was an amalgamation of lots of things, but spotted that there was a gap in why did you have in the price point in women's wear. So you had very expensive designer luxury, and then you had not very good quality high street. And why couldn't you make clothes that were beautiful, well cut, amazing detail, but not for this insane price point that you would have to get in the sort of designer, very high luxury market? And it was just at the time when the internet was really taking off, and actually I understood that all very expensive luxury brands had grown up through wholesale models, so they were giving half their margin away to the middleman. So we then followed this model of direct-to-consumer luxury, which means you can offer the fit and the quality of luxury, but for half the price point.
Pretty exciting. And but Jennifer, you're a much newer entrant to the market. So your business is really very young. Tell us. I mean, you were in banking before, so very different. I mean, a bit like Rupert, a very different pivot.
Yes, absolutely. So I launched 3 years ago, so fairly recent, but it feels like a lifetime ago. So I've always had a burning passion for shoes. I always wanted to do shoes. I used to wear my mom's shoes to revise, and I just felt, I told her I felt more confident. So it was always shoes, and I always said it. And then my parents pushed me into academia. I grew up in Lebanon, and Middle Eastern parents really push their children into economics or medicine. So I went to the London School of Economics. I did economics, went into banking. Loved my years in banking, which is very odd, I know. Did 7 years. I was the youngest director. I went from Merrill Lynch to Julius Baer, set up my own desk, and that kind of gave me a taste of setting up something. And really there I felt that was the right time, 7 years, and it appears that life happens in cycles of 7 years. I felt that if I wasn't going to do this now, I would never do it. And I'll tell you the funny story later, but I was getting married and my husband wanted kids, so I wanted to time the launch of the brand. So I left banking and didn't know much about shoes. Had done short courses at St. Martin's during my banking years, so I would go every Saturday. I was working Monday to Friday, and every Saturday I was going to St. Martin's doing short courses, and they offer incredible courses. So I did shoe illustration, fashion illustration, just to get my creativity going. And then when I decided to do the step, I did a 6-week footwear summer school at the London College of Fashion. It has an incredible teacher, Nafi Mustafa, who taught me pretty much everything. I would literally produce a strap and he would throw it across the room and say, redo it, it's not good enough. So really pushed us, and we covered everything from shoe illustration to shoe making. So we actually made 4 different pairs of shoes. And then I just felt, okay, so I didn't really have the skill set, but I'm a big believer of learning everything in life. I was Googling factories. I found a factory that I liked, tried 3-4 times to approach them. They said no. Then eventually they said they didn't speak English. So I learned Italian, and then I was like,
really wanted to.
I just really wanted it.
With that factory.
Yes.
Why did you think they were the best factory? What had brought you?
So I've always been very methodic, and I was looking at. So I literally Googled shoe factories in Italy, and then I identified 4 hubs, which is Milan, Florence, Venice, and Bologna. And then I was like, what's the most practical to go from London? And I focused on Milan, and I kind of did it by elimination. And then there were 2 factories, and sometimes you really just have to follow your gut instinct, and just, I don't know, the website was really very basic. Something spoke to me about it, and I sent an email, no answer for 2 weeks, and then I called, and I was like, hi, I sent an email, like very naive, and they're like, do you know how many emails we receive per week? And I was like, well, and he was like, we don't speak English, like in a very broken English. And I was like, okay. So I took 4 months, studied Italian, did my business plan in Italian, and I called back and I said, I need to present in Italian, and this is how it started. And yeah.
I'm getting the feeling that determination is a really important characteristic in life. But I mean, Darren, your path was it feels more logical in a way. I mean, you didn't. You weren't a frustrated quantity surveyor or a banker with a vision. You were an apprentice throughout the whole, in magazines really.
Yes, I guess so. Yeah, I mean, I've been in media for 18 years now. So I started at the Times, then I went to Esquire, where we met. I ran Shortlist for 5 years. So it kind of eventually came to a point where you think, okay, right, I'm fed up of seeing everybody else either make money or make mistakes. So surely I can do this better. Turns out it's actually not that easy to do that, but it felt like it was sharpening to a point. But it was just serendipity, really. It was someone I knew in the industry. I'd never worked with them before. He and another guy had said that they want to set up a free luxury men's media brand that is relevant to men today, unlike some of the others that are out there at the moment. I said, you're mad, but I'm in, I've got itchy feet, I've done 18 years for other people now, let's go for it. And yeah, like you say, it was a combination of all my experience.
Because Shortlist also had that model, didn't it? I mean, it was a free to consumer men's magazine. How useful was that when you were thinking about with your business partner founding this, a startup in media?
It was hugely useful because it taught me P&L. It taught me how to run a business. It taught me the importance of cash. It taught me how to make hard decisions because the board above me and the directors above me made hard decisions on my behalf, and I didn't agree with them as an employee, but you understand now you have to make some very difficult decisions. So it was perfect grounding, really. And all of them actually, Mike Sutar and Karl Mars and the rest of them have been very supportive in this venture.
And what was, it's you're in a slightly different part, not just your path is different, but you're in magazines. You can't be the single founder. You can't do what Jennifer has done and do it all by yourself and then learn Italian and love this. You have to have a team of, you have to have a creative team around, because you're the business brain in that mix. How do you go about getting the right team about you when you're starting a
Well, again, it was fortuitous because the other two, their expertise, one was a writer. He'd been a watch journalist for kind of 14 years, so his experience were words. The other was a creative director. He'd been a creative director at creative agencies for 10 years, so he was pictures, and I was money. So when it came to the three of us together, it was literally the three amigos, and you couldn't have asked for it to have been that harmonious in skill set, which was crucial to getting the business off the ground, because we all knew what we had to do. We were all experienced at what we knew how to do. It was just then about how well we communicated with each other to be successful.
And tell us a little bit about the vision for the Jackal, because it was not just about a magazine, was it? You had a much wider, fragmented view of, not fragmented, but a kind of it's several different businesses under one umbrella. Yeah,
it was just a blessing and a curse. It was we looked at what Tyler Brûlé had done with Monocle. He had blended media and content and creative agency with e-commerce. And we just felt that there was a very simple business model. If you could build an audience, if you can engage with an audience, then you can mobilize that audience, either to come to events or to buy into products or to work with brand partners. Very simple, and it worked extremely effectively for a long period of time, and for Tyler has been working for 10, 15 years.
And that idea of modelling is an interesting one, isn't there? Is there a business that you had in your head as the acme of brilliance when it came to beautiful women's shoes? Was there, were you thinking, I need to be the next Manolo Blahnik, I need to be the next Jimmy Choo, or whatever? What was in your head, Jennifer?
So for me, the shoe market is already so saturated and it's a very competitive market. So for me, something was very clear. I had to make it different. I had to be unique. I had to offer something. I mean, a shoe is a shoe. It can be a cosmic shoe. It's not. You're not reinventing the wheel, but I had to find the next Red Soul, basically, and it was really like a light bulb moment where I had done at St. Martin's this course, and I had done straps around the heel, and tonight I'm not wearing the strap, but basically. I was like, anyone can do a strap around the heel. How can we make it more complex? And I love complex. How can we make it more technical? And it was just this moment. So in French, a stiletto is called talon aiguille, which means needle heel. So I was like, that's it. My heel is a needle. The eye of the needle is a hole. So I'm doing a hole into the heel. And then a strap is passing through the heel, embraces the foot. Aesthetically, it's recognizable, so you've got the hole and you've got the strap, but then also functionally, it holds the shoe to the foot and it adds extra comfort. So for me, that's it. I just went for it once I had that.
Does that feel really radical, having a very beautiful, very elegant shoe. I mean, you've got incredibly elegant feet and your shoes look amazing on you, but they look amazing on everybody. But comfort was key, not just, so there's a kind of form and function thing going on.
Absolutely. So for me, I think gone are the days now where women buy shoes and wear them and sit at a dinner party and that's it, just suffering under the table. For me, it was, and I wore heels all my life in banking, in banking mostly, and it was for long days, for long hours, and I always felt my toes were kind of squashed. So comfort has really been at the forefront of my brand. And there are ways, I mean, a stiletto is not going to be like a sneaker, but I made kind of the opening, which is what we call the décolleté, wider to kind of accommodate for wider feet, because I have wider feet.
Sold right now.
Yes, and there's some
heels. I mean, obviously not the men in the audience probably, but it's a bit holy grail, a beautiful, beautiful shoe that's also comfortable.
So it's just trying to find this right balance between aesthetic and comfort.
You're speaking to somebody who puts Voltarol on their feet before I go to a party if I'm wearing high heel shoes. Just saying. So
I hope not in my shoes.
No, not in your shoes. No,
because you've got a pair.
Not in my shoes. Absolutely not. But that idea of having a kind of a vision seems to me fundamentally, when I'm talking to Brandstorm, when we're interviewing prospective program entrants for Brands of Tomorrow, this single vision is really clear. What was it for you? What was it for you, Claire, that you thought this is the vision for the business? That's the dream that you hold on to when things are tough and you're having to do your invoicing at 4 o'clock in the morning.
I think the most important thing about having a vision is making sure that everyone in the company knows what that vision is, and finessing that vision as you go along. I mean, we're 10 years old now, and we've grown at 50% year on year, and we've got, we started off online, and then we've grown the brand through lots of shops and concessions and Selfridges. But as you go and you grow, the vision has to be finessed and made right for that moment in time. And you have to really be very clear and stick to all of your core principles. So in not a dissimilar way, we guide the whole business through what we call the 3 Fs. So it needs to be flattering. First and foremost, women want to look better in clothes. They want to look taller, slimmer, more shapely, disguise and reveal. So flattering, and that's an expensive process because you have to get the fabric right and the cut right, and that's a very, very expensive process. You have to get expensive designers, fabric technicians, fit technicians. It's a luxury product, but so therefore you have to follow a luxury process. So there's flattering, and then there's functional, which is it needs to be worn. If you're investing in something, you want to make sure you wear it lots, and that's become a sustainable angle within the business. So sustainability is through investment dressing and making sure that everything you invest in you can wear multiple ways. And then there's fashionable, which is a sort of terrible word at the moment because that doesn't really go with sustainable, but actually fashion is really important in tracking trends, because without that you can't reinvent your business. There's only so many pairs of black trousers a woman will wear, so you actually do need lots and lots of trends coming through so that you can update what you're doing. And actually women, at the end of the day, your higher being is to provide confidence. And actually within confidence is feeling contemporary. So women want to feel modern. So it's the 3 Fs that guide our business. And then we have this strategic price points. So we always have to be doing what high-end luxury designers will charge a lot of money for, and what the high street will do, cut corners on. And we have to be forensic about that gap. And the minute you take your eye off that gap, you've lost your position.
And how do you achieve that? Because that is really, really tricky, because you're producing things at an exceptional quality, but you have all the issues around, the costs around fashion, which you've been talking about. How do you manage to have that forensic view on that?
So you just review, finesse. You have to be constantly reviewing. You can't just go, oh, I've cracked it now. Every month it changes. The world moves so much more quickly than it did last month. That, you know, it's forever. Things changing so rapidly all of the time. You just have to keep, you know.
Is that something you find, Frieda? The kind of there's a very, very specific aesthetic for House of Hackney. It's very maximalist, it's very beautiful, it's very playful. When you launched, it was kind of the antithesis of everything else that was available. How do you hardwire newness into that? Because that excite and delight customers is such a feature of the high-end model.
Yes, I mean, I think there's, well, from a design aesthetic point of view, I think the DNA was pretty much set from the start of the kind of the visualizing of the brand. It continues to evolve in terms of, you know, there are interiors trends, which we've been credited with very much setting. So there was obviously that real movement of palm leaves and interiors, which we presented, and you know that's moved on now. We're very much focused on you know we are as a brand hugely inspired by nature, so that's always our muse, so we're now at the moment the collections for the next few seasons are very much inspired by British nature, so you've got the design aesthetic on one side, you've got new products, you've got fabric and wallpaper are our core categories. And then we do home accessories, so lighting, cushions, etc. So we've got quite a tight category base. But then, you know, as the world, as everyone here is discussing, is moving so quickly, and kind of gone are the days that you can set a 5-year plan. There's a buzzword at the moment which is agile, and we all have to be, you know, we need to be continuing to assess, you know, the customer, what they're looking for, obviously the competition, price points, and you need to kind of enjoy that part of it. There's a lot of like strategic assessment, and you've got to be very much ready to pivot, to not be too set in this is what we're doing. And I think ultimately you can't go too far wrong by very much really listening to the customer, whether that's analysing what's being sold, what feedback you're getting. We've run workshops, we've run questionnaires, and ultimately you're supplying to them. So I think that's important, and you know their demands are ever changing and evolving.
And do you think there's a size at which that ability to be incredibly responsive, to be agile, to be very nimble, to kind of pivot to is there a size of business that becomes much more problematic in? Because it's still your nerve centre of the business is still really you and Javi, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. I mean, we launched in 2011, so we've always, it has always been quite tough, like a tough economic climate. We launched pretty much with our own savings, a little bit of EIS funding, a very small pot, which we've always had to do a lot with. It wasn't until we got to year 5 that we decided to actually properly grow, we need to take in some investment. So we've always been really risk averse, and it's taken, you know, we could see even from our early days that the US market was, you know, it was a market of opportunity for us, and we very much used the website to test markets, but it really wasn't until you know we had wholesale set up over there with good results. We could see, you know, the US press, you know, really engage with the brand. We could see our online US customers. We could see the growth there, that we decided to test our own physical space there. So, you know, obviously there's a lot of reports about the decline of retail, but I think that it's just about the evolution of it. And yes, obviously online is going from strength to strength, but at the same time, you know, it's not to say that the physical space is finished either.
It's the experience, and the product is kind of the souvenir of the experience.
Definitely.
So mine is a little bit, you put
Yeah.
yourself in a different place
Yeah.
kind of at the table
Yeah.
in a way.
And we talk about omni-channel. So we were multi-channel. We call it omni-channel. And you've got a customer who wants to come in and see and feel the product, but they mightn't order through a physical space. They'll go home and perhaps do it online. So it's, I think, as a brand where we have like separate sales targets at the moment and separate teams, the next stage over the next few months is going to be actually combining it. And I think that is a hurdle, or not even a hurdle, but an opportunity to get right, because there's no kind of blueprint for the business to follow. Yeah. We are just analysing and strategizing.
Adapting.
Yeah.
I mean, Rupert, that seems to me to be fundamental to your business, because when that idea of experience and connecting incredibly strongly emotionally with the customer, telling the story, these things that we talk about as being fundamental to the experience of luxury, but also at the kind of bleeding edge of where the customer is right now. You launched straight away with an experience built into your proposition. Yeah. Tell us a bit about why that felt logical for you.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose we got some buzzwords in Conker that kind of will sum up all the kind of theory around a kind of real, like the genuine authenticity and sort of provenance of product. So we kind of coined it into this term of like genuine craft, partly because within the gin industry, there's so many sort of, kind of
pretend craft.
Pretend gin. So where they say small batch or craft gin, and they're not actually a distillery. And so from that moment of like wanting to set Conker up, it was, we will be Dorset's first distillery, not I'm going to launch a Dorset gin. And so
it would be pretty straightforward to do that, wouldn't it? You get some spirit,
very.
some
you just need money, because you just need to. You just go and speak to a consultant, and the people who make big gin brands do white labelling for small. So,
but hardwiring that authenticity right into the beginning, that's not a cheap thing to do, is it? That conviction that that's the right thing to do.
Well, I just always thought that those kinds of brands will always be found out, and I've kind of feel sort of vindicated in that, because actually the consumer is so intelligent now, and well informed. So we've just done this whole we distill ourselves, we bottle ourselves, and that's all visible online, and it kind of, it's great because you don't ever need to weave a marketing story. You just turn the iPhone on yourself or what you're doing that day, and so there's something about being genuinely authentically a producer from day one, while it might be it's taken us a lot longer, but that sort of genuine shoestring story actually becomes what you are, rather than.
Because that feels really organic that you've done that. I mean, and it's interesting because actually when you look at all the enormous amounts of work that's produced at London Business School and Luxe, or HSA and the big school in Paris, or all the academic stuff, it's like it has to be authentic, it's got to be about provenance, it's got to be that customer connection, it's got to be about emotion and storytelling. I mean, that just felt instinctively right to you, and I'm wondering whether that's something that the rest, when the rest of the panel were looking at their own businesses, that idea of craftsmanship and provenance and authenticity and transparent, including the customer in the story, was important. Was that a conscious decision? I'm just going to open that up to whoever wants to leap in first.
I'll say for me, the Made in Italy was the founding principle of my brand, and it was the starting point. And I really communicate on that. I mean, my factory is a family-owned factory. It's very artisanal. The father of my manufacturer is still there. Literally everything is made by hand. Everything is cut by hand. So no pair of shoe looks like the other. And people forget that, because in this world of overconsumption and overproduction, people just assume that everything's made by machines, and my entire production is pretty much handmade. I mean, there are machines for the nails, but pretty much that's it. So craftsmanship is something very important, and it's also something important.
This is an important announcement. Would the building manager please go to reception? Would the building manager please go to reception?
All right.
They've just heard there's a sale on your shoes. No. Sadly, there isn't. Otherwise, I would not be on this stage.
Yes, and it's something that really helped as well justify also the price point, because as you said, the consumer today is very well educated. They want to spend, but they need to understand why they're spending. So for me, the craftsmanship is really something I communicate and I take very dearly and I invest in.
Because the Jackal has been incredible at reflecting and bringing to life some of those trends in print. What are the main things that you've seen that your editorial team have been writing about it as being the new in luxury, what the customer wants, what Generation Z wants? How do you say relevant, but also have those things like handmade, heritage, provenance, etc.?
It's a good question. I mean, I think a lot of those buzzwords, as you say, provenance and authenticity and storytelling, it's tricky for us because we're storytellers in two forms. We have original content that we produce, whether it's about Klinefelter disease or talking to Wilfried Zaha, who's never given a magazine interview before, about what it was like to go to Manchester at the age of 19, have his manager quit on him and have to survive in a city without any support. It was about being relevant. It was about delivering kind of true stories that then resonated with someone who would be reading that. So that's one part. Then the other part is working with brand partners on their stories. And actually that's harder because you have to take in what they're saying, what they determine to be provenance, what they say is authentic, what they believe is genuine storytelling, and then retell that in your own tone of voice. And what you end up having is a very honest filter with brands around what is genuinely an interesting and authentic story. And that's the hardest part about telling those brands in return that it's not interesting, that it isn't relevant. Because when you are caught up in your own bubble and you are running your own business, you can believe every hype that comes through until you then have to present that story to press and to media. And then they will judge whether you are authentic and how relevant you are. So it's all the buzzwords that you say, but I think for us, the key thing was always how can we remain relevant?
Yeah.
And that was the difference that we felt we offer from a content producer, from a content generator to the existing products that are out there, because it's very easy to slip into producing content on behalf of those who pay you money, i.e. the advertisers.
Yeah, so keeping it honest is
exactly.
Exactly,
because the customer is intelligent, the reader
is,
and they have such little time, they will read it, digest it, assess it, and if it didn't reach them, if it didn't engage them, if it didn't move them, make them feel something, then they'll move on and they'll find something else because there is a lot of content out there.
I mean, it seems, the business of luxury, looking at if it's grown 49% in Britain, British brands have grown 49% in the last 4 years, that feels like a suggestion that the sector is really relevant. And I'm really interested in why everybody chose the high-end sector, the kind of top of class, best in class part of the business to launch in, because that's not really where the big bucks are. I mean, if you're going to launch a brand, you want to make a load of money and ship off in a Ferrari, then luxury is perhaps not the most obvious space to do it. And I'm just so Claire, perhaps I start with you. Why was it the high end? Tell us a bit more about why you think there's a particularly interesting business opportunity in the high end, say.
So I think ours was around that, offering that quality but for less. So I think the growth of direct-to-consumer models has enabled that to happen. So owning the customer, owning the data, owning your margin. So I think it's a growth area, and I think that if you stay very, very, very true to and be fastidious about quality, but stay true to the gap in the market, then you can actually grow and make money out of a luxury business. And you don't have to be Gucci to do it. And it's the growth sector in America, isn't it? There's so many direct-to-consumer models coming out of Silicon Valley.
Everlane.
But they're more, so many of them are about fancy marketing and fancy data, but they quite often forget the product. And I think if you can pull together data and the understanding of the customer and your intuition and your determination to hold that price point and deliver quality, then you are the discerning customer will come with you.
Is that the same for you, Frieda? Because it's you came from a very kind of a billion, multi-billion pounds business from fast fashion beyond into something much more artisanal.
Yeah, so I think, well, for us it was, speaking on behalf of myself and Javi, for us to work, and in those first few years, it is 24/7, 7 days a week. We needed to believe in the product. So coming, from Topshop to being able to design and create product that completely spoke to us, that we felt was of, we were proud of the quality, proud of how it was made. We would want in our own home. That was the difference. And there's, obviously discussed, use the words honesty and integrity, and that is just so important in how, we believe in the product, and conducting your business with honesty and integrity, getting your price point right. We spent about a good year traveling around the UK, literally knocking on doors of factories. And it was really pleasing to see that the UK had this traditional British, homeware factories, so textiles, fabric, wallpaper, lampshades, like fine bone china, and they're all in their traditional areas dotted around the UK. And it was very much, leaving, I suppose, the high street. No one handed me a little black book of, here are all your suppliers. And we had to go and find them, and we worked hard to find them. And it was, a door opening and, one closing, and then you get a lead to another one. But ultimately, we made some very good decisions in those early days that, with the supply base, that to this day we've grown to be, their biggest accounts, and very much family-run businesses. Generational businesses, and very much, that craft and that quality being handed down from generation to generation. So I think that's been an important part of not just the story, but the foundation of the brand.
Yeah, the kind of the entire ecosystem.
Absolutely.
But it's often, I often hear when I'm sitting with brands, newish brands, that it's starting your own business or founding your own brand is the best of times and the worst of times. And just what I thought I might ask you, Rupert, when did you think it was all going to go right? But what moment did you think, why am I not? I've always got a quantity surveying to fall back on.
Yeah. Well, actually, that's true. I literally did have that, and that was always in my mind that I kind of got qualified in surveying, and it was a safety net. And people say, often use the word brave for leaping from the day job, and I genuinely don't sort of recognise that in a funny kind of way. Again, I was so convinced that it would be, the concept would be a success. Whether or not I could do it, obviously, you'd never know I just knew I would throw everything at it. So convinced for a very long time. I think all startups, if there's a gap and a customer, all startups sort of rocket. If your product's good and there's customers. I think what I've found is that momentum and sort of exponential growth will come to a sort of a crest in the hill, and it's a kind of, I've learned that kind of you must what the strategies of a startup won't last beyond the third and the fourth and the fifth year. Your startup luck runs out, and then you've got to start actually building a sales team.
You need a new plan.
And bringing in talent, and I think that's probably what separates the businesses that start and fail and those that don't, is the kind of willingness to kind of ditch an old strategy and adapt.
Yeah, that nimbleness, that agility that we were talking about earlier. What do you think is going to be the biggest challenge in the near horizon for you?
So the list's quite long. Do you want me to start?
I don't know.
The industry's
pick the hairiest one.
Yeah. So the industry is incredibly saturated in terms of gin. So we're Conker Spirit, and it was from day one that was really important rather than being Conker Gin. So 2 years ago we launched the UK's first cold brew coffee liqueur.
Very nice it is too.
Sorry for the plug, but it's Christmas. So.
It makes a great espresso martini.
Yeah, but that was a really, really deliberate move to spread our bets and also be known as a drinks producer rather than one of these gin brands I was talking about earlier on. So I think certainly everyone in the spirits industry, it's very crowded. It's very noisy online. So I would say it's really how you break through all that noise. And we've done that through kind of creating a quite unique product. That's going to be
keeping the uniqueness.
Keeping the uniqueness, exactly.
Keeping on and reinventing, constantly reinventing. What about you, Jennifer? What do you think the next big challenge is going to be? You've had a really great trajectory so far. I don't want to pour there's no cold water on this. I'm not. You're doing great, but what's keeping you awake at night?
It's a very exciting turning point for me, but it's also a source of stress. So I'm launching in the US next week. I'm launching at Bergdorf Goodman in New York and Neiman Marcus in LA and Palm Beach. So the US is like the American dream. So for me, I've not been physically there yet. I've been through Net-a-Porter in the US, and it's been mostly my strongest market. So I know the demand is there, which is very odd because I'm not there physically. But the shoes have a very US aesthetic, very classic, clean aesthetic. So I'm very excited, but I know that with the US comes volume, comes production, fingers crossed, but should. And because I'm all about craftsmanship and I have kind of a small factory, it's really scaling production and following and keeping that quality, not jeopardizing the craft, the quality. So it's going to be that, because I guess when you reach a certain volume, then you have to start looking maybe to expand.
Yeah. And then it's a big investment in manufacturing
as well.
So ensure you've got the supply to meet the demand.
Exactly, because a lot of the payment terms. Cash flow nightmare, because you get paid 15, 30 or 60 days after you ship, and you have to pay your suppliers. So it's really kind of almost like a Tetris game to try and, when can I pay this invoice? Because I know I'm getting paid here, but I need to pay him first. So yes, on the production cash flow.
Yeah, I mean, you're a bit further on, but is that something that still keeps you awake at night? That's increased orders means increased investment. The supply demand.
Supply chain management and cash flow management. As you know, every business has to keep an eye on it. We've seen massive businesses go under, almost weekly. So I think every business has to manage cash flow. That's just a fact of life.
There's some quite interesting. There's some innovative things that we're seeing in fashion, particularly around kind of ready to made to order and things like that, which can help manage. But when you're at a bigger scale than that. So I just want to ask, one of the things that Brands of Tomorrow and Walpole has in common with what happens here at the British Library is an extraordinary network. I mean, I say it's extraordinary because obviously I run Walpole, so I would, but I hope you found that too. How is it being connected to what use really has being connected to a bigger network of people that you perhaps don't know? What use has that been to you? Who should I start with? I'll start with Claire.
With Walpole.
Or other networks that you're connected to that you found helpful in business.
Walpole was phenomenal when we won Brands of Tomorrow because, at that stage you're getting access to big business brains. And without question, the advice I got in those early years still resonates today. And that getting sort of my business off the ground with great advice in the early days led then to great investors who then form part of a phenomenal board who give you, just some of the best advice you'll ever get. So I think it's one door opens, another door opens, another door opens, another door. So Walpole was phenomenal.
And is that something that you see, Darren? Kind of their access to trying to. It strikes me that when you're a young business, you've got a great network of your own. But what happens when you've kind of run out of that advice? Did you find how helpful was that for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Because my network was very much within media, and then suddenly I'm dealing with finance and HR and cash flow and raising investment. Raising investment was the hardest part. Again, you know, kind of getting onto the Walpole Brand of Tomorrow program last year, opened up a number of people, Jonathan, Helburn, and you realise that just in 20 minutes, the advice that someone can give you, just one small nugget, can really change the outlook of the next kind of 2 to 3 months. And without that, I don't think we would have been able to have opened the next door and the next door and the next door. Saying that, it's something that I hate. I hate walking into a room and having to network. And I remember my old publisher grabbing me by the arm and making sure that we went round, identify 5 people that we had to speak to, and I had to speak to them by the end of the night. But if you don't do it, then you've wasted the opportunity of that evening. So it's, you know, when you run your own business, you have to go and talk to people. And then you realise they just want to talk to someone else in return. And that's been the most enjoyable part of the networking, is speaking to other business owners. It's very different from when you're in a 9 to 5 and you're speaking to another employee, because there's all the politics around it. But when you're speaking to someone else who is living it, is understanding it, and just one comment can spark you off on, like, cash flow, because that's the thing that keeps you up every night.
Yeah,
exactly. Margin. Yeah, it's refreshing, and then you realise you're not alone.
Yeah, that's. I mean, it's really, it's interesting, that, isn't that sense of not being alone. I wonder whether you, is it a lonely business being an entrepreneur, being a founder of a brand? How? I mean, you filled with existential angst at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the only director in the company. It was sort of my idea, and it's grown that way. But so I've spent a lot of time on my own sort of personal development. So, you know, it's not instinctual how you run a business. You know, everyone learns it. So whether that's through, like, I've got a business coach now. I've took on a non-exec chair in the last few months. So someone who's, you know, launched and grown 2 businesses over his life and been very successful. So, you know, it's just surrounding yourself with people who've done it. I'm a massive yes man as well. You know, saying yes to opportunities where you just think, I'm so busy, or, you know, that I can't actually see how that would be beneficial. But you go, and like you say, you come away with just this little piece, or that person. And you quickly learn that not only is everyone in the same boat, but actually a lot of people want to help out.
That's, yeah, absolutely. I've really seen that kind of generosity. Other people, you know, it's hard to go network, but actually people really want to help.
Yeah, do.
The thing that you mentioned a kind of investing in yourself, and the kind of you are your best asset. I mean, you are the founder. The whole equity of that business is in you. And I'm only now, in the last probably 18 months, hearing people, young brands, talking about what you need to invest in yourself in order to make you resilient and match fit, and the kind. I mean, I guess we could broadly call it mental health, but it's I think it's, you know, slightly more wellness than that. Has anybody else felt that need, that they really, or their sudden realization they have to put more effort into themselves to kind of make them the business, you know, to really, you know, you're the best asset, you've got to polish it?
Definitely. I mean, I think in those, definitely for our brand, it has felt like our 3rd child is probably the most demanding of our out of our other 2 children. And you've got to, obviously we're a husband and wife team. We bring very different skill sets to the business, complementary ones, and we fill the team out as well. But you need to. You're pretty much, you know, keeping fit, keeping sane. You've got to keep yourself strong, because every day there are, you know, things being thrown at you, and I think there's also, you know, you're leading a team as well. You need to be inspirational. There's also a new, more gentle style of leadership that has come through and is very welcome. And you're, you know, even an important part in motivating. So you've got to stay up. But I think, you know, a characteristic of many entrepreneurs is that they're usually quite optimists. You need the finance people to be more realistic, you know. But it calls for obviously such tenacity, and there's days when you got to pick yourself up and get on with it. And I think definitely I've seen what can be a tough morning turn into a great afternoon. So it's forever transient and changing.
And you know, and what life and work is incredibly blended, because you're working all the time. I mean, you're Jennifer, your brand launched simultaneously with your family.
Yes, so I gave birth to twins 10 days after I launched the business. This was the joke that I wanted to say initially, that I was such a control freak all my life. That is the one thing I could not control. And the first scan, the doctor said it was one baby, and I was like, great, I'll take him to the factory. And then it was, second scan, it was
teach him Italian.
Two. But actually, I wanted to touch upon the networking and getting out there, and I wanted to share something that as an entrepreneur, and I don't know, for me at least, I always found it hard asking for help or asking a question, and the way I launched my brand, which I had no clue, I visualized it and I trusted, but I knew José Neves, the CEO of Farfetch, from like social, and I told my husband I'm going to go ask him for his advice, just for his advice. I mean, it was kind of a far-fetched idea, no pun intended, but he was like, "No, you're crazy. Don't bother him." And I said, "I'm just asking," because he was in footwear. I had read that he was in footwear prior to launching Farfetch. So I just sent him an email and I said, "Can I just show you my prototype just to know if I'm on the right track or I'm completely delusional?" And talking about people that help, he's he's the CEO of Farfetch. And at that time, little did I know that they were acquiring Browns. It was not yet announced, so I didn't know. He gives me half an hour, I go to the Farfetch offices, and it's just, it's incredible. And I show him the prototype, and he kind of gives me his honest opinion, and he tells me the execution is immaculate. The DNA is very strong, go for it. That's it. And it's all I needed to hear, that's it. The next day, I wake up and I have an email from him introducing me to the CEO of Browns, Holly Rogers, and just said, "I think you should meet Jennifer." And that's kind of was the flipper that's kick-started. And had I not gone, sent that email or asked him the question, I wouldn't, because Browns launched me, and then it was a kind of a snowball effect. So I really think something I learned is to get out of our comfort zone. Asking a question, sending an email, introducing yourself, and you never know, something in a conversation, even with a cab driver sometimes, an idea sparks. They're incredible. So it's something I wanted to really
just share. Ask is a really, really great mantra for all new businesses.
It really gets lonely. It can really get lonely, and then you start losing confidence and losing faith. And as you said, we have to be very optimistic. That's the only drive that pushes us.
I think that's a really great point to ask my last question before we then open it up to everybody. And I think the screen as well, to start asking questions. So, Darren, give me knowing what you know now after running your own startup, what advice would you go back, if you went to the beginning, knowing what you know now, what advice would you give yourself, your startup self, now you're,
I would have raised money pre-launch. It was the hardest thing to do, as I was told, is to raise money in the middle of, after launching and before you're successful. Because you're neither here nor there, you're not on an upward trajectory, you're not yet on that hockey stick curve, you're a going concern, you're a kind of proof of purchase. And we had advertisers like Cartier and Rolex and Omega and luxury brands all on board from issue 1. So we felt we were already on that track. But yeah, to have just held off, to have gone in with the vision, the dream, the team sitting in front of us, laying, as my old CEO said, medals out on the table and saying, "This is it, do you fancy the ride?" That's when you capture imagination before any figures are then thrown out. And I think I would have liked to have done that earlier.
What about you, Jennifer? Would you? You sound like you've given yourself great advice. Anyway,
I would definitely not give birth to twins at the same time, but it's a blessing. I think talking about self-care, I think I did stress a lot for things that you just have to trust that somehow, if it's meant to be for you, it's just gonna happen. So trust more and stress less over things that you don't have control over. Yeah.
And what about you, Claire? Going back to the beginning, knowing what you know now, what would you tell yourself?
I've thought about this because there are so many things that you would change along the way. There isn't just one, but I think in many ways, I wonder if I'd change anything, because the mistakes you make get you to a better place every time. So be very positive about the mistakes you make. There's barriers come up the whole time. There's things that sort of flatten you, and then you've got to pick yourself up. But every negative and every mistake, if you can be positive about it and be determined that you can make things better through that, then I think you need them to get to better places. So actually, I sort of look at all of the things I did wrong rather positively.
It's a very creative process. Fail better.
Yeah.
So the one piece of advice you would give yourself if you went right back to the beginning?
Well, I'd probably say to kind of lower our initial expectations. But that said, I don't know if I knew how hard it was going to be in those first really 5 years, whether I would have actually done it. So I always thought it would take a year, but I always remember obviously coming from, a brand like Topshop and involved in lots of launches there. And when you launch a range and you get a lot of press back then, it would sell out. So when we launched our brand, and we'd got in the previous 4 weeks, all the big, newspapers wrote pieces about the launch that was coming, etc. And I'll always remember we had a really successful launch party, and the web was going live that night, and then woke up the next morning, bit of a hangover. I think I also learned not to party at your own launches. Learned that mistake. But we just logged in to see, how, what had sold, and it was 0. So I think we were
is it working?
Yeah, it was absolutely, exactly. And just then obviously going into, oh my goodness, what have we done? We've left our jobs, but then you just start pedaling.
Nice feeling with the hangover.
You just start pedaling really fast. But I think, we launched on a tiny budget, and I've seen brands raise a lot pre-launch and not really, testing lots of things or not, putting budgets into unknown areas, and actually, going through a lot of money quite quickly. So I think what we did, and actually, being very disciplined, which is kind of we've continued to be. I think it was actually quite right not to launch until we really until we'd really tested the concepts, the markets, etc. So,
what about you, Rupert? Give up charter surveying more quickly?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's tempting to look back at my previous career, and so I did biology at uni as well. So I thought I'd go into science, and it's tempting to look at those as a waste of time or misdirection, or kind of. If only I'd started it earlier. But actually, each part of your kind of my previous life has sort of prepped me for running Conker. But I would actually give some advice to my much younger self, and actually just to stop. I think I was just trying to craft the perfect CV, proper kind of careers advisor, trying to get, this is what people want in a job, in a kind of. Yeah, and your kind of qualifications and all that sort of stuff, and actually just do what you enjoy, because actually you're most successful pursuing what you enjoy. And I learned that doing a job like in surveying, where I was kind of chasing the kind of career and stability of a salary, it'll have no legs if it doesn't get you excited. So
your inner entrepreneur was always lurking. You just needed to unleash it.
Just embrace actually what you enjoy.
So kind of go early, be determined, be resilient, look after yourself, fail better, lower your expectations, but also be really disciplined, and get, if you're going to be, the entrepreneur is there, get them out quickly. When you have, really go for it. Yeah. Darren, Jennifer, Claire, Frieda, Rupert, thank you very much for sharing your stories.
Thank you.
Now, questions. We have 20 minutes for questions, if everybody, or less, if nobody's got anything to say. Who would like to kick off? This one over there.
Hi.
Oh, there's a microphone coming round.
I thought I was loud enough. Hi. I wanted to ask what you felt about the future of manufacturing in the UK was. As someone who wants to launch a British-made product, I'm finding it really difficult to find manufacturing for fit sampling, let alone anything else. And I'm starting to consider going elsewhere. So I just wondered what does anybody manufacture in the UK?
And then maybe a bit.
Yeah, so are you talking about fashion garments?
Yes.
Yes. I think, well, definitely us being in the interior sector, having our supply base close to us has really helped. Usually in the UK, order minimums are usually less than Europe or Asia, so if you're starting small, it's usually, good to get in with a smaller factory. There is a garment hub in North London, which, has been manufacturing, since the 60s really, and we dip our toes in fashion, and definitely the factories are there.
Claire, have you have something to add on manufacturing here? Have you gone overseas?
We do make some luxury goods, sort of leathers and shearlings and things like that in the UK. There's some great manufacturers for that. It kind of depends what you're thinking about, because obviously there's, up in Scotland you've got the high-end knitwear. In Leicester you've got more fast fashion, and in London you've got some niche quality factories. It sort of depends what market you're aiming for,
but you can find it. Just be persistent.
Well, I'm glad that you said about the garment hub, because that was going to be my follow-up question. But yeah, I'm wanting to go into beachwear, swimwear, specifically for larger cup sizes. So it's having to find manufacturers that can work with underwire and really being able to express my vision for it. So I will check that out.
They do exist, and the British Fashion Council has a directory of UK manufacturers, but I suspect also the British Library will be able to give you one too. Next question. It's you.
So I'm currently 23 and always been inspired to kind of start my own company in the future. I guess what's holding me back at the moment is that lack of knowledge and lack of I don't have an idea to start with, but I also want to kind of have that legitimacy behind me and build kind of a understanding and a knowledge through maybe another industry and then start my own company. Do you think that's the best thing to do? Take a few years to kind of get to know an industry and then start something?
Rupert says no.
Shall I just go for it and make mistakes and see what happens?
Jennifer says no. Yes. Rupert says no. I'm just going to say there's no one way. You have to go with your gut.
Yeah. No, I think, having worked in a different industry, you learn, you make mistakes, you learn from people, from experience, and you gain confidence as well. So 100%, I would say, unless you have the golden idea and you can patent it, I would say work somewhere else, gain experience, gain some financial as well, support to launch your idea, and then there is time.
Yeah, and kind of building a network is quite helpful if you're in other places, but then I'm not an entrepreneur, Rupert, so I can't say it. He's got another question. One at the front here.
Question for Rupert, actually, who I'm slightly in awe of.
We are all in awe.
My drinks cabinet.
Particularly after a couple of his drinks.
He's doing real manufacturing. Yeah. I'm interested in how you select an initial scale. You've got a lot of kit to put up, quite high-tech kit, and significant regulatory issues too. And to start with, no market. How do you size and scale your initial
So,
and then how do you expand beyond that? And
yeah.
It's a trade-off between money, presumably.
Yes.
Money and...
So we started extremely small. Didn't start with a sort of 100 grand burning and hole in the pocket. So I literally started on a 30-litre pot still. So in terms of like the actual cost for the equipment, it was probably like £1,000. And in fact, I actually started on a 1-litre pot still in my kitchen, developing the recipe. So there's kind of, you see kind of two startup distilleries. One suddenly appears with, £500,000 worth of shiny kit. And then us, who started with a tiny kit making 60 bottles a week. So actually, we're still on that small kit. We're still kind of, making these small stills work very hard. And actually, this year and next year, I'm kind of going through sort of trying to get some investment to scale up to the kind of Willy Wonka style factory that I want people to bring people round. We just got a bigger piece of kit when we could afford it, and got another member of staff when we could afford it. And the HMRC, it was a whole year from leaving the day job to selling the first bottle. So if you're selling anything, like food or drink that isn't alcoholic, you can sell it the next day practically. Whereas we had to set up, take out a lease on a premises, convert it into a distillery, get the HMRC round. And then hopefully they said yes. Yeah.
Next question. There.
Hello. With the rising acquisition costs and the digital landscape changing constantly, and everybody's 10 pence of what should and shouldn't happen and the best way to... How much is influencer marketing contributing to your growth?
Do you want to take that?
It's everything, to be honest. So you can't just rely on influencers. You need influencers are great, and it depends which ones you get, but the press are also great. Digital marketing is also great. Word of mouth. You need a very, very multi-channel marketing strategy, really. And we all talk about, every business runs on cost per acquisition and customer lifetime value, and getting the balance between those two metrics right is the be-all and end-all, really, as long as annual margin. Influencers are great, but they're not guaranteed. You need guaranteed streams of marketing as well, things you can control.
Thank you.
Question at the front.
Hi. I run a luxury, not a luxury, I run a workspace provider. We hire out workspaces of all kinds and shapes and sizes to startups and entrepreneurs. So I just wanted to ask the panel, as you're luxury brands, do you work from a luxury workspace? And how do you keep your workspace creative and inspiring?
We don't. We work in the cheapest place I could find. We're on Pentonville Street. It's a non-for-profit organisation. It was the best rent we can find. It was run by guys who were all about giving back to the local community. So we felt complete charlatans being a sales commercial business in there. But no, that was one cost line. I did not want to look luxury.
Yeah.
We have dogs in the office. That's.
I think dogs are very important.
Yeah. I think
for the luck, yeah.
I think that when you get to a stage where you've got great people who've come from perhaps bigger brands and you bring that expertise in, I think there is an expectation of working in a nice environment. Certainly we decorated because that's what we could afford, but I think the employees have deservedly high standards, and the workspace being one of them.
There's a question there.
Hi, so I have a small brand that's been going 2 years, and just listening to the panel, it's very difficult to know when you change from being a startup to a company that's actually, more than a startup that's going to have some longevity, and at what point did you feel it was worth investing in other people? So there's two of us who are joint co-founders, but we do literally everything ourselves. So it's a clothing brand, it's called Cucumber Clothing, and we do actually, we manufacture in the UK, and obviously we have design help and all that kind of stuff, but in terms of help with the website, marketing, we do everything ourselves. And at what point do you feel you have to actually, we found it very difficult to get backing because fashion brands is very hard to get money, but how do you actually decide, okay, now I need to take on some more help and it's worth doing that? Because we're running on a tiny margin, we just reinvest whatever we get. So it's at what point you need to put some more, back yourself basically and say, okay, I need an expert in digital marketing, I need an expert in this.
Who would like to take that question? Jennifer?
I'll start. So I started working from home, and the buyers would come and I would present around the kitchen island, literally, and I had the twins next to me sleeping. And I carried on working on my own for 2.5 years. So I just hired in the summer a full-time person. But up until then, I was literally doing everything. And the great thing about it is that you touch upon you're in control. So you know exactly where every penny is going. You're in control of every decision. And you do everything from website to invoices to creative to logistic to shipments to everything. For me, a major decision-making point was the US. And the volume and the production and being controlling and wasn't enough, and I had to learn to delegate, and it's the best thing you can do. I have so much more creative time on my hand, although I don't have time, full stop, but you realize that you get so much more added value from having someone.
I would agree with that. It's more just knowing that between the two of us.
For me, it was the production.
It's another skill set that we just, we can't be good at everything. It's knowing when you
And then
need
these days you have a lot of freelance. So I was on project-based. So I used a website developer for this, for the website part. I took someone to write my text and my biography. And this is the best thing you can do because you don't have the commitment, but you really get the expert value in this.
It is really hard. So seeing a lot of, I have a lot of startups and fledglings and scale-ups that I see, and it's very difficult when you've got hardly any cash flow and you don't want to invest. But you have to make the hard decision about what is your time useful for, and are you, by doing everything yourself, not doing the thing that you should be doing, which will bring more money into the business.
But you're so involved in the day-to-day, it's so hard sometimes to see the picture.
And it is hard, and that kind of single-mindedness about going, what is it ruthlessly that I need to be focusing my time on? Because if you're packing all the boxes, it might be that time could be spent better and more profitably and more more profitably is the word. So, do we want to take some questions from outside the room?
Yes, please. Yeah, we've had lots of questions here, really good ones as well. So it's always difficult to choose which ones to ask, but there's a few here around trends in luxury. So just wondering from the panel, sort of a question that perhaps each of you or any of you could answer is, where do you see the big trends in the luxury market going at the moment? And then specifically perhaps around the fashion side of things, will slow fashion stay on trend? Perhaps one there for you, Claire. And also a question here, a really interesting one about provenance and craftsmanship, and how important will that remain or be for growing a luxury brand? Maybe that one for you too, Jennifer.
Do you want me
to look at trends?
Go. Yeah, I think sustainability is going to be the determining factor over the next 10 years. So I think growing a sustainable business and having a sustainable positioning is going to be the biggest challenge for luxury, without question, over the next, that and digital acquisition. Yeah.
And I think also the end of ownership. There is obviously an interesting new fashion model coming in, which is obviously hiring clothes. I think that's really interesting. The car industry is doing it already. It'll be interesting to see do people start hiring sofas? Who knows? But I think all of that Yeah, there's going to be a change in consumer behaviours around that.
Yeah.
And I think for craftsmanship, I view it as a long-term. People will always invest into quality, and quality for me comes from craft, from the craftsmanship and the provenance.
I mean, Darren, you've got access into the minds of all the European very high-end and luxury brands as well. I mean, that craftsmanship is really seen as being integral to the model, and perhaps more important in a digital world, the human, than anything. What do you?
But I think true sustainability. I think there's a lot of bandwagoning. I think there's a lot of jumping on the general trend. But being able to explain where your product is made, how it's made, talking about carbon footprint. I think there's a lot. If you're going to go into that world around sustainability, then you're going to find yourself in a deep hole of how you really are going to explain that to a very, very savvy and educated young customer now.
Got to back to that authenticity.
Exactly, and provenance.
Yeah.
And I think there's also going to be, I mean, we've looked ahead at our 5-year plans, and it needs to be a slow, sustainable growth. I think that's part of the wider sustainability piece as well.
I think, I mean, the age of turbo capitalism is really over, and fortunately, British luxury particularly is in a very good place because it's very, the supply chains are highly controlled, and the quality of the product is amazing. So the idea that you can buy less and keep it for longer. Luxury should never be obsolete. An Apple Watch is not a luxury item. You can stick an Hermes strap on it for all you like.
I've got some more. I could go all night, but a lovely question here around who inspires you all the most as founders?
Rupert?
My daughters.
It's a tricky one actually, because I suppose when I probably relate most to when I was reading these books by creative, like entrepreneur and innovative people, when I was trying to leave my day job. So trying to learn about how they think and how you think creatively, and there's all the kind of cliches.
Top tip for books to read?
For leaving the day job, or kind of the for realizing that the time is now. There's never been a better time in kind of human history to do your own thing, and that's a book called Entrepreneur Revolution by Daniel Priestley.
Everybody writing that down?
Yeah, that's really amazing. So I remember reading that and just being like offended that I'd gone. It was like a real unveiling of actually, why am I going down this traditional employment thing when really I could be doing my own thing with the power of social media and stuff. You have access to a global audience, really.
What about you, Darren? Who inspires you?
It's going to sound dreadful, but I can't do anything without my wife. We had twins last year. We have 3 under 4.
Yes.
No, I know. Sorry, I was desperately hoping you weren't going to say your wife. But what she's had to put up with in the last 2.5 years, 3 years, are some serious mood swings, like a cashless teenager. So I couldn't do any of this without the support that she's given me.
Perhaps I could finish on one more question from the Twitter wall, and it's around work-life balance. How do you achieve it as entrepreneurs? Because I know there's a few in the audience who never quite
from every single person that's founded a business.
Yeah, and also how you get the work-life balance, but also how do you relax as well, and how do you become, quoting Rupert, the master of your own time as well?
It's not for me to sort this, but I think it's a massive myth, this idea that running your own business, suddenly you're the master of your own time. It's nonsense. But who wants to take that question? Just want to manage everybody's expectations?
Yeah, I'll just say that my home life and work life is it's one. So when I was working in a job I didn't like, and it was literally an hour away, I'd drive an hour back. I remember literally becoming a different person when I stepped through those office doors. So I almost led this kind of like bipolar existence, because you're not really doing fundamentally what you are and who you are. But now everything feels a lot more aligned. I love doing what I do. I find it very easy to talk about. I would have died had I been asked to talk about quantity surveying in front of a load of people, because I would have felt like a fraud, And so, I'd say it's about just aligning your personal and business objectives, and then suddenly there's less conflict.
Yeah, work-life blend, is that true for everybody?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Context is key, I think, for me. having a family. I lost my father last year as well, which means, fine, if I lose a business, the worst thing's already happened. So, I'm not afraid of failing. So once you have that context in the real terms of your life, then it makes it much easier to deal with the pressures of business.
Good. Is that a good moment to wrap it up? Do not forget, anybody, to fill out your. Oh, there's one burning. We've got time for one burning questions. There will be time afterwards with the drinks.
Hi, good evening. My question is for Jennifer. I wanted to ask, how profitable is the luxury shoe market for women? And as someone who's found a unique aesthetic for a shoe brand, would you advise going into the luxury sector or the mass market? Because, like you said, it's a balance between a passion for quality and craftsmanship and the desire to make mass profit for your business.
So I'd say, I'm a very risk-averse person as an entrepreneur. So I always made calculated decisions. So I went with a very, very, very small production initially. I don't know what the margins and the profits are in the mass market or like the kind of high street. I would do luxury because if you have that kind of unique feature or because an aesthetic is never going to be something that has longevity. You have to have something that stands out and that is scalable across the seasons. I'm working on a very tight budget and I'm hoping this year to break even, but by keeping it very tight and by meaning that I worked 3 years almost underwater on my own. But it's just making these calculated risks, and I would have loved to go out and spread budgets on marketing and doing campaigns, but I think the power of Instagram, the power of having this word of mouth nowadays help a lot to get you on the market. So yeah.
Great. Right, we have got drinks there. Do not forget to fill out your prize draw. There are some amazing prizes donated by this incredible panel. And I'm just going to say a huge thank you once again to you guys for joining us.